Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for joining us, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Hayley Evers-King, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to the first in this webinar series on data for the UN Ocean Decade. I'm the lead marine applications expert in the user support division at EUMETSAT, and I'll be your host today. But you'll meet many of my colleagues as both this webinar proceeds and as the rest of the series continues. So I'll introduce them to you as we go. But for now, a bit of information about the series and how things are going to go today. So a big welcome to you from all the partners who've organised this webinar series. That's us at EUMETSAT as part of our work under the European Commission's Copernicus programme and beyond. We're joined in organising this webinar series by our colleagues at Mercator Ocean International, who run the Copernicus Marine Service, our colleagues at IMODNET, the Early Career Ocean Professionals Programme, and also in collaboration with the UN Ocean Decade Data Coordination Office. Sorry, bit of a mouthful. You'll hear more from all of us as this webinar proceeds. This one really is an opportunity for us to introduce ourselves to you and to learn more about yourselves as well. During the webinar today, you can ask any questions through our Slido, so you can scan the QR code there and the link will also be placed in chat. We'll also be using Slido for an interactive session later on, so please take the time now to open this up and familiarise yourselves with it. We will, however, only take the questions during the Q&A at the end. So if you can write who your question is aimed at from the talks as we proceed, then please do so that we know the right person to direct your question to. And I should note as well, the webinar today will be recorded, so you can come back to view this at any time. We'll be sharing that on our various communications channels. So a little bit first about the Ocean Decade. I won't say too much about it because we've got other speakers who'll be able to say much, much more. But for those of you who aren't yet familiar with the decade, it's, as it says on the tin, 10 years where we're looking at generating the science we need for the ocean we want. And the Ocean Decade is focused around 10 different challenges to generate 7 outcomes that we want. And really the idea of the different activities that are taking place under the decade is to provide transformative ocean science solutions for sustainable development. And it's not just about the ocean in and of itself, but also about our relationship to it. So we're looking to develop a healthy and resilient ocean, keep our oceans clean, to maintain a productive ocean, to be able to predict our ocean, for it to be a safe place for us to interact with, to make it accessible to people all around the world, and also to be inspiring and engaging. And these are the broad aims and outcomes for the Ocean Decade. As I mentioned before, there are 10 different challenges associated with the UN Ocean Decade, and you'll hear much, much more about those as we proceed with this webinar series, because we'll be showing you how you can address some of these with data. But just to give you a feel for them, I won't go through each of them individually. As I say, we'll talk more about them in due course. But you can really see that they're about all the different aspects of the ocean and our relationship with it as humanity. So covering everything from pollution to working to protect ecosystems and the biodiversity, to how we use the ocean in terms of food and our economies, to the way the ocean influences our weather and climate, through to how we respond to the hazards that we face from the oceans, and even beyond this, into the way that we observe it and the way we interact with it through digital processes, through our skills and our knowledge, and our relationship to it at its core. So there's a lot of different challenges here that we're facing through the Ocean Decade, but I think a lot of them have the opportunity really to improve the way we interact with it and how we protect it for future generations. So you might ask, well, what's data got to do with all of this? And if you're an oceanographer like I am, you may have seen a variation of this diagram at some point in your education. The oceans are very, very big. We know they cover 70% of our planet, and they change on various different temporal and spatial scales. So from the very minute aspects of the ocean in space, so when we're looking at the tiny, tiny algae that exist in the surface, all the way up to the influence they have on climate phenomena, on weather events that take over large portions of the globe. We have to understand our ocean from this very small to very large spatial scale. And the same thing goes in time. We have extreme waves that happen in very, very short time frames, but we also have things that happen in our ocean on yearly, decadal, and even millennial kind of timescales. And really to understand and address the challenges that are affecting our oceans and ourselves, we need information to make appropriate decisions at these time and space scales as well. So data becomes very fundamental to our interactions with the ocean. But this is its own challenge. Monitoring and modelling our oceans at these scales really is very difficult. They happen, the challenges, as I said, at a broad range of temporal and spatial scales. And so we need a huge range of information as well to actually capture the way these challenges affect us and how we can respond to them. This is everything from physical and biological information through to information about other environments, how they affect the ocean, the land, the ice, etc., and the socioeconomic information that allows us to make appropriate decisions about how we interact with them. This information also needs to address a huge range of different stakeholders. You have expert scientists who need all the data we can possibly get to model the ocean across the whole globe at temporal and spatial scales that are absolutely vast, all the way down to an individual fisherman who needs to decide whether he's going to leave the port in his particular country on that day. So huge different range of stakeholders with lots of different experience levels. And so really this cuts to the core of what we want to achieve with this webinar series of Data for the Ocean Decade. And it will bring together many of the key organizations that are responsible for collecting and generating this data that I've talked about. So that's why we're all here today. But we also really want this webinar series to be co-designed by you, because really to make the Ocean Decade impactful, this needs to be a partnership. We can't do it all as data providers. We need to empower those of you out there to work with this data for all the different challenges that the ocean faces today. So that's where we go from here. And to start off, we will have this introductory webinar today. You'll hear from me first of all, and then I'm going to hand over to our colleague Jan Bart, who's going to talk about the Ocean Decade in more detail from the perspective of the Decade Coordination Office for Ocean Data Sharing. Following that, Evgenia will talk about the Early Career Ocean Professionals Programme, something that may benefit some of you who are here today. And then we'll move into the data provider landscape section of this webinar. And our colleague Fabrice from Mercator Ocean International will give an introduction to the European data provider landscape and how we all work together, indeed why there are many of us to address the data needs of the ocean. Following that, we'll move specifically into some provider-based presentations, and Kate will talk about EMODnet and the data that's available from them and how it is relevant to a variety of different applications suitable for the Ocean Decade. Then we'll take a short break, so you can pop and get a cup of coffee, use the bathroom, whatever you need to do. And then we'll come back for another few data provider presentations. So you'll hear again from me about the main types of data that is provided by where I work at EUMETSAT and how you can use that data for different marine applications. And then Aurora will talk about what the Copernicus Marine Service has to offer in terms of their data portfolio and its applications. Then we'll finish off with an interactive Slido session. This is the opportunity for you to express the needs that you have for working with data, and particularly in the context of the Ocean Decade challenges. That will be using the Slido, and we'll share the links again and walk you through those interactive exercises. And then we'll close today's webinar with some inspiring words from Alessandra Cacciari from DG DEFIS, who are responsible for the Copernicus programme. So really bringing back to our central view of data and its relevance for the Ocean Decade. And then you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions of any of us who presented today or about the webinar series in general. So I remind you again that we have the Slido there for the Q&A, so you can put questions and answers at any point during the webinar today. And I'd ask you to try and say who you'd like to ask the question to, so that I can direct it to them during the Q&A session. And that's it from me for now, so thank you very much. I will hand over to Jan Bart for our first presentation on the Ocean Decade.
Thank you so much, Haley. Let me try and share my screen. Can you hear me clearly? Can you see the slides?
Yes, perfectly. Please, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much. My name is indeed Jan Bart Kallewaert. I'm the lead manager of the Decade Coordination Office for Ocean Data Sharing. A mouthful indeed, so I'm going to try not to have to repeat that too often. So first of all, it's a great pleasure, really, and an honor to speak here today at this first webinar on European data for the Ocean Decade. I would really like to warmly thank the organizers for taking the initiatives, EUMETSAT, Copernicus Marine, EMODnet, and the ECOPS program. It's a much appreciated and much needed initiative, which is aligned very much with the mission and objective of the Decade's Data and Information Strategy, which I will present, and the IOC UNESCO mission under the Decade. So to help frame and set the stage for this webinar, in the coming 10 minutes or so, I will try to give you a a very high-level short overview of some of the main activities and developments in relation to data in the decade. So as Haley already introduced, and as you all should know by now, the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, or Ocean Decade for short, was launched in January 2021 with the goal of boosting ocean science, supporting the goals of the Sustainable Development Agenda 2030, in particular SDG 14, which already identified a number of serious threats to the ocean health, while at the same time being significantly understudied and under-resourced. The decade in itself should be seen as really an unprecedented opportunity, I think, to advance and transform not only how we do science, but also the way and level at which we are supporting it. And that's very important in the context of today. All with the vision of developing the science we need for the ocean we want. So this is the Ocean Decade Framework, which is based on the change management theory, where a series of endorsed actions allow us to work towards addressing some of the most burning challenges that all build towards specific desired outcomes and impact. The decade actors are jointly channeling their efforts and resources to those 10 key priorities or challenges, and challenges 7 and 8, which deal with collecting and sharing ocean observations and data and developing a digital representation of the oceans, are really key cross-cutting challenges. They are underpinning all of the other challenges. Already this was recognized very early on, and in the decade implementation plan we can read that the collection, management and sharing, and most importantly, the use of data, information and knowledge will be cornerstones of the success of the decade. Earlier this year, we did a survey to gather some insights from the stakeholders involved in the decade actions to better understand the challenges they are facing in relation to ocean data sharing and discovery. To also identify where and how we can better provide support to enhance data sharing practices in collaboration. We started with a mapping of all of the actions that were known at that point based on their submitted information, and that showed, and that's not a surprise, that nearly all are either collecting, generating or using ocean data for their activities. The survey itself received about 92 responses from about 32 countries. And we will publish a report with much more details, but just a few reflections here. While the majority of the actions indicated that they are sharing their data in a fair way, about half of them indicated that they don't have a data management plan in place. And there are still many that indicate not sharing their data at all yet. Some of the main reasons for that are the lack of time or resources, not knowing exactly how or where to share the data, which indicates a lack of data sharing guidance, the need for sharing more best practices on data collection and submission, need for more instructions, for example, overviews of existing repositories, ingestion services that already exist, information on which standards to use, for example, also important. There are lacking, or there is not enough information about templates, examples of data management plans and data policies that can be drawn from. And importantly, the need for both basic and advanced data management training. Some of the other bottlenecks for sharing data include intellectual property issues or issues dealing with sensitive data, lack of IT support, and uncertainties about data publishing standards. The survey also showed that many of the actions face difficulties finding and or using data or products they need. Some of the main difficulties relate to the fact that a lot of the data resources are scattered in many different repositories. That will not be a surprise to you. Data sets have restrictions often or are not accessible or not discoverable. Data was found not often, or as a bottleneck, not often in the right formats or not at the right resolution. Another difficulty experienced was the lack of metadata about the quality or the collection methodology, the provenance, issues with traceability. Also, lack of skills to use computational resources and lacking terms of use or unclear licenses were other reasons that made it difficult to use the data and data products that could be found. In terms of what would be helpful, the most responses were leading to the need for a global integrated web portal providing a distributed data discovery and access service that harvests from existing local, regional, and thematic platforms. And some of the other elements are linked to that: a list of relevant repositories and platforms, overview of existing marine data lakes, and so on. So, one of the recurring issues faced by many Decade Actions is the difficulty in finding, accessing, and using ocean data. And that's why initiatives such as the webinar series and the webinar of today are so valuable. That's also why the Ocean Decade Coordination Unit decided very early on to develop a data and information strategy to address some of these critical issues, with the ambition of leaving a legacy behind that endures beyond 2030. In particular, to leave behind a trusted, inclusive, and interconnected ocean data and information ecosystem that is actively used for decision-making to support sustainable ocean management. And it has identified a number of enablers and formulated 3 key strategic objectives to reach this vision. And these largely align with the FAIR data principles: findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. The strategy implementation plan is being finalized as we speak, with more concrete recommendations and steps and actions that Decade actors can and should undertake to make sure that the data and information is made fair. The way it's organized is following the main steps in a typical research project lifecycle. And if you want to stay informed or assist with the review, you can scan the QR code here and sign up, and we would be very much appreciating your feedback and suggestions. And in this way, you're also informed. In any way, we will share the presentation afterwards for those of you who want to have another look later. Another action that has been undertaken by the Decade Coordination Unit is the creation of 3 coordinating structures to help develop this digital ecosystem. And that is a coordination office for ocean data sharing, which I'm leading, which is hosted by IODE. There is another coordination office for ocean observing, which is hosted by GOOSE. And there is a collaborative center for ocean prediction, which is hosted by Mercator Ocean. The DCO on ocean data sharing, which I'm leading, is responsible for coordinating the data management and sharing component of this digital ecosystem. And we are supported by a number of implementing partners, and EMODnet is one of them. And that's really much appreciated because it's really a collaborative approach. Our main mission is to help implement the strategy, but also to assist the Decade Actions to make sure that they find the data resources they need, and also provide help, guidance, and assistance to make their data fair. And we have a website with a data resources toolkit and an online data help desk, which is already operational. Another core objective or role that we have is to help partners to address Decade Challenge 8, which deals with the creation of a digital representation of the ocean. And to say a little bit more about this challenge, as part of the Vision 2030 process, over the last year or so, we've been working with 16 experts from across the globe to set a strategic ambition for this challenge, which aims to create an adaptive and dynamic digital representation of the ocean to make the ocean accessible to a much broader community. It's important to note here that since the start of the decade, the notion of a digital representation of the ocean has now matured and evolved, and we consider it as a global collection of interlinked and interoperable digital assets, which can be applied to simulate and understand the global ocean's past, present, and future. Not just the digital twin of the ocean, but the totality. Some of the assets include FAIR data, information, software, applications, as well as the architectures and infrastructures which support and connect them. And while the creation of the comprehensive digital representation of the ocean is the ultimate objective of this challenge, the focus in this white paper taken by this expert group is to define the aspirations for delivering or creating the change needed for setting in place the enabling environment and initial digital content and assets by 2030 that will enable us to fully deliver on these ambitions on the long term. So this enabling environment allows us to create and access an increasing number of digital representation and twin applications of the ocean, as well as underpinning data and information needed to develop them. And with that, we have put forward or identified the need for a number of key tools and services that need to be developed and put in place by 2030, which we will collectively have to deliver upon. The first one, very important one, because it links directly to an identified need by the Decade Actions, is to make operational a federated global ocean data discovery and access service with a map viewer, providing access to multidisciplinary data products and information on the past, current, and future state of the ocean. Second, and there is already the Decade Collaborative Center on Ocean Prediction working on this with a number of partners around the globe, we have to put in place a global technical and organizational structure for ocean forecasting. Also very important for a broader public, we need to put in place a reference implementation for a global digital atlas of the ocean with a minimum starting set of 10 global base layers. And we also would like to put in place a number of local applications demonstrating its utility. Finally, to conclude, I would like to highlight one very important Decade program, which we hope and expect that will help us to realize part of these objectives. And that's the Ocean Data 2030 program, which main aims to drive the development of an open data and information ecosystem, linking all of these already existing information systems from around the world, to allow us to have a much easier way of discovering data, information, and knowledge products that are being produced within and beyond the decade. And the Ocean Data and Information System will be a central element or infrastructure underpinning this and to realize this vision. So with that, I would like to wish you a fruitful and interesting webinar and look forward to working with the European and global partners to achieve this shared vision towards a thriving digital ocean. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan Bart. If anyone has any questions, please do remember to put them in the Slido, and you can highlight that they're for this presentation in particular, and we can address those at the end of the session today. Our next presentation, moving on, is from Evgenia, talking about the Early Career Ocean Professionals Program. Evgenia, are you there? Can you hear me?
Hey, thank you so much, and hello everyone. I'll just put up my presentation for you. So I hope you can see it all okay. I hear me as well. Thank you.
Loud and clear. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm really very much excited for today's webinar, and it's really a pleasure to introduce the ECOP program today to all of you and welcome you today. So we are very much excited for this webinar and the upcoming webinar series, because we know that ocean data is really a crucial topic for ECOPs in our community. So I'm Evgenia Kostanay. I'm the Global Coordinator of the Early Career Ocean Professionals Program, or ECOP program for short. So we are a UN Ocean Decade endorsed program, and so we were endorsed in 2021. So I will be giving you quite a summary of the program, our structure, and our activities. So who is an ECOP? An ECOP is an individual with 10 years or less of professional experience. That is regardless of age. So we don't have this age cap of 35, as many countries or organizations do. So our definition also covers all kind of areas of expertise and sectors and industries, etc., because we want to be really very inclusive and our definition includes not only people working in academia, but also all kind of professions, such as divers, entrepreneurs, journalists, just volunteers, interns, lawyers, government officials, etc. So it also includes students, PhD students, so anyone really who is passionate about the oceans and seas, or who works in these fields, which is related to oceans or seas in any format or capacity. Now, our mission is to support early career ocean professionals in their capacity development by providing meaningful networking, funding opportunities, capacity development opportunities, and we basically make sure to create this capacity for cooperation and networking and knowledge exchange. So we just celebrated our 3rd anniversary. We were endorsed in June 2021, and we are one of the official Young Ocean Decade programs. Right, so what are our actual objectives? So first of all, we want to understand the needs and challenges of ECOPS in various countries and regions. Now, we do that by conducting surveys and assessments for regions and countries. And this is very interesting because, of course, the overarching challenge that ECOPS are facing is, lack of funding, sometimes lack of jobs in the marine sector, lack of understanding how to find a suitable job or a suitable opportunity. But then there are also some specific challenges for certain countries or regions, and this is always very interesting when we encounter that. So why do we do that? Because we need to understand those needs and challenges to better suit it, to better tailor our activities so that we can better refer and address those needs and tailor our direction and our activities so that we are more effective. Now, we provide free, accessible and inclusive training opportunities, and I'll be talking about it a bit later. So we want to make sure that the opportunities that get sent to us through this landscape of the Young Ocean Decade, through our connections with other endorsed programs and projects, so that those opportunities get shared with our members, and that many opportunities are really freely accessible to ECOPS, and that they know where to find those opportunities, whether they are funding opportunities or training opportunities. So this is why we really pay attention to those funding opportunities, employment opportunities, mentorship opportunities across the world, and we try to pick them up and share them. Now, of course, we also share the voices of ECOPS and aim to make sure that they're heard not only on our channels, but also in high-level conferences, meetings, and spaces. So here you can see our structure. So basically we have 5 regional nodes: Africa, Asia, Caribbean Sea, Central America, Pacific Islands, and Europe is coming in 2024, just in a few months. We already have quite a significant number of national nodes in Europe. We have more than 40 national hubs or national nodes and 5 task teams, plus the deep sea or deep ocean task team coming up in 2024 as well. And then we have 9 endorsed projects under the UN Ocean Decade, which are hosted under the ECOP program. So those are the proposals that were applied to be endorsed under the UN Ocean Decade, and then they have some connection with ECOPS, and then they got endorsed and hosted under the ECOP program. Now here you can see a map of global distribution of our national nodes as of June 2024. So you can see that this is quite impressive that we have so many nodes already. So there are 3 levels, 3 colors that you can see. So in red, pins that are colored red means that these countries have their web page on our website, ecopdecade.org. So they have an established coordination committee or coordination team, and they have an established coordinator. So those marked in yellow means that they have an appointed focal point or a coordinator, but they don't have a separate web page. Now, this is the case for Central America and Caribbean seeds, but you can also find those contacts on the webpage and contact your coordinator for the country. Those countries that are marked green means that these places have someone who has said that they want to develop a node in the country, but it hasn't been officialized yet, but there is already a group working on that. So here you can basically see the same information, but with the exact countries written here. So those countries that you see as underscored, they have their dedicated web pages on our website. So in order to amplify the voices of ECOPS, we really would like to share their stories, explain and inspire other young people as well by sharing those stories. So with this in mind, we run many communications and engagement campaigns. So our long-lasting campaigns are ECOP Stories and ECOP Conversations, where people talk about their careers, why they're passionate about their career, their job, why did they choose to become a marine scientist or a marine activist. Then we also have specific campaigns which refer to a specific major date, like World Ocean Day or our anniversary that we just celebrated on this 7th of June, or maybe it's Christmas or New Year, where we kind of wrap up and provide a summary of what we've done. We also had this very successful campaign called Explore My Coastline, where ECOPS were talking about what is wrong with their coastline and how they work in addressing any challenges related to their coastline. So capacity development is really something that is of major concern and to our ECOPS. So we really focus a lot on various activities around capacity development. And this is why this webinar series is so important for the ECOP program. So we launched our own webinar series back in 2022, and this is here you can see a list of webinars that we have had so far. Now, if any of you really has, if any of you have any idea, any specific suggestion on what we should tackle next in our webinar, please reach out to us. We are very flexible. We are very open to ideas and suggestions. So as you can see from here, we had a very diverse spectrum of topics ranging from how to start an NGO to do blue economy and drones and underwater technology, and really very diverse topics. And we are proud to continue this webinar series this year as well. So in 2023, we also ran a cooperation project with SOA, Sustainable Ocean Alliance, where we ran 7 regional webinars together with their respective regional coordinators. Now that was done for these 7 regions, so Asia, Central America, Africa, Lusophonia, North America, Europe and Caribbean region. And then we also cooperate with Ocean Teacher Global Academy for specific technical trainings on data analysis. So the first 2 were for ECOPS in Africa. They were fully online, fully free, fully accessible. And then the third one was for ECOPS in Asia. And then the one this year we did for ECOPS in Central America, and that was done in Spanish, so that there is no problem of a language barrier. Now we are planning our first in-person training, and I'm very proud to announce this today, which should happen in Malta in November this year. That will be an in-person training, and we'll be announcing this very soon. So if anybody wants to cooperate with us on that and future in-person trainings, they're very welcome. Now we also develop our databases, again, to provide resources to ECOPS. So we already have a database of mentorship programs on our website. The database for funding opportunities and training opportunities is a work in progress. It's partly already on our website, and we also want to upload a database of networks related to ocean science on our website as well. Now, this is really a summary slide with our online presence. So we are almost on every social media channel. You can subscribe to our monthly newsletter and visit our website. There's plenty of interesting stuff over there, and you can also find us on the Ocean Decade Network, which is the main platform for the UN Ocean Decade. And if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer you. So please feel free to reach out and send me an email. Thank you so much, and I wish you a very successful and interesting webinar ahead. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Evgenia. I can see we've got lots of questions already coming in for you on the Slido, so you're going to be busy at the end of the session and I think afterwards, but thank you for the excellent summary of the ECOP programme. We move on to our next presentation now, which is from Fabrice, to give you all an introduction to the European data provider landscape. Hi, Fabrice, can you hear me?
Hi, Heidi. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes,
Please share your screen.
share my screen and my presentation. It's okay for you? Okay, let's go. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So I'm Fabrice Messal. I work at Mercator Ocean International as a UX and Capacity Development Manager. I will give you an overview of the 3 services that will be described in detail just after me, showing you how they complement each other and their specific features. So we talk about European data providers here in this presentation. So I hope you are ready to dive in data portfolios because we're going to talk about marine data and information. So let's dive. So first of all, we know that the ocean plays a major role in our lives. Ocean monitoring now is essential if we are to learn more about the environment and we want to support political and civil society commitments to protect the oceans from threats such as pollution, overfishing, the impacts of climate change, other. Over the years, Europe has developed programs and initiatives to play its parts in the international collaborations and also to provide its member states with the best infrastructure, data and services to enable policy implementation, support sustainable blue growth and scientific innovation, and to support ECOP, obviously. So when we talk about infrastructure, we talk about the development of in-situ observation programs. We talk about the development of in-situ observation, satellite observation programs in coordination with international initiatives. We talk about constellation of satellites to monitor land and ocean from space. And we're talking about the development of operational oceanography with 3D digital simulations on high-performance computing facilities. And the capacities required to monitor the ocean and make operational oceanography a reality cannot be provided by one single company or one country alone. In all of these, collaborations are essential, and that's why I have the pleasure to present the 3 services. So, EMODNET, the European Marine Observation and Data Network, EUMETSAT, and the Copernicus Marine Service represent the main marine data services in Europe. They all propose an open and free access to marine data and products with a strong user support and services. And for some users, it's not easy to identify the difference between the services. So my role today is to briefly show you how the 3 services complement each other to cover all the marine product needs. So on this table, I have deliberately taken shortcuts to simplify the offer of each services. Of each services, but you will see in the next presentations of my colleagues that it's not that simple. The 3 portfolios are so rich But anyway, I assume this simple vision and the shortcuts. So as you can see, I classify the sources of data with in situ, model, and satellite, the temporal coverage, and the spatial resolution. We only talk about physics and biogeochemistry products on this table. And as you can see, EMONET is specialized in situ, EUMETSAT in satellite, and Copernicus in 3D numerical models. Okay, even you can find other kind of information on their website, but if we want to take shortcuts, this is my shortcut. So about the temporal coverage, when you are dealing with satellite and in situ information, you provide multi-year data products and near real-time products. And in the Copernicus Marine Service, thanks to the 3D models, we can have forecasts. About the spatial resolution, if you are looking for high resolution or real data, you need to focus on EMONET with in situ information or EUMETSAT with high resolution satellite images. And the Copernicus Marine Service try to provide similar information through the web portal, but there is some specificities. Here we are. This table shows some specificities. So you must know that the three services are working end-to-end to serve all users. We are working to enhance the catalogs of products, to create new services, to have the same efforts to provide training workshops, to organize events like this one. But you can see some specificities in the products, in the spatial coverage, and with some specialty. And for example, for EMONET, you will find complementary the physics and biogeochemical products on geology, biology, bathymetry, chemistry, human activities, which are very important to relate the impact of human activities to the ecosystems. EUMETSAT is providing satellite products with a lower level of processing of the data than the Copernicus Marine Service. So you can find the same kind of product with different level of processing in the two services. All of them have a European coverage and the global coverage for the satellite products and the Copernicus Marine Service, thanks to the global models. They are also involved in different initiatives. And for example, EMONET and Copernicus are providing the backbone of the European Digital Twin Ocean. And the Copernicus Marine Service and EUMETSAT are also involved in another service provided by all the Copernicus services, which is called Wikio, which is a platform where you can find information on the land, the atmosphere, the climate, the marine, and information from satellites from EUMETSAT. As you can see, we are sharing efforts and resources to simplify data accessibility for users, and like we are doing today. So I let now the floor to the next presenters, and you will discover the three main services. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fabrice. That really nice intercomparison and showing how we all fit together. Hopefully this will all become much more clear to you during the rest of the presentations today, as you hear more individually about these different services and from Fabrice's colleagues later about the Copernicus Marine Service. So thank you. So moving on to our more specific presentations, it's my pleasure to invite Kate to speak about EMONET and their applications relevant for the UN Ocean Decade. Hi, Kate.
And hi to everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so you should see the presenter version, right?
Yep, you're all good. Please go ahead.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much to everybody who's joining us. It's a pleasure to present to you today at this webinar that's co-organized together with EMONET, Copernicus Marine Service, EUMETSAT, and ECOPS, together with the Data Sharing Office of the UN Ocean Decade. So my name is Kate Larkin. I'm the head of the Secretariat for EMODnet, which is an EC marine data service called the European Marine Observation and Data Network. I'm presenting this on behalf of a lot of different people. We're a very large network of 120 organizations and hundreds of experts. So I'd like to particularly acknowledge Vicente Fernandez in our team, who helped to put this presentation together, but also the experts of the different EMODnet thematics and data ingestion. And some of them have joined us today. So if you have specific questions, we will do our best to answer those at the end. So I'd like to take you through a little bit, as Hayley said, the offer of EMODnet. What types of data do we offer? What's the coverage of those data and how are they used? What are the applications, both in Europe, but also globally? And how does EMODnet connect to the global ocean data ecosystem, which is many different ways? And also how EMODnet is actively contributing to the Ocean Decade, also the UN 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. And then how we are working with different regions worldwide. There are many different data services, of course, in different continents, in different nations. How are we working together with those to make sure that our data from EMODnet is connected and interoperable, so it's working together with those different data so that we have a collective global data ecosystem for the decade. So EMODnet in a nutshell, we are basically democratizing and unlocking marine data with a European focus, but increasingly a global context. It is a European Commission marine data service. It's funded directly by one of the Directorate Generals of the Commission. So that's the Maritime Affairs and Fisheries DG Mare. And EMODnet has been going more than a decade, close to 15 years now, and it's really built up a lot of authority and regional best practice in the marine data domain. Its focus, as Fabrice and others have mentioned already, is the in situ data. So these are the ocean observations, the data that's collected in the water or in field surveys, so in and around the water. We're not talking about satellites here. That is the capability of EUMETSAT and Copernicus Marine Service that you'll hear about later. But we cover a very diverse range, all of the different marine environmental parameters you can imagine, and the human activities at sea as well. As has been mentioned, EMODnet works very closely with Copernicus Marine Service, and a particular example I'll highlight today is the European Digital Twin of the Ocean, which is a common public EU asset where the data services are working together. So I'll tell you more about that. And then EMODnet is a key contributor to the digital commons, so connecting worldwide with different services. So we're just homing in now on the in situ data. So you can see on the screen an infographic or graphic from GOOS, the Global Ocean Observing System. In Europe, we have a framework called EOS, the European Ocean Observing System, and all of these different platforms are collecting ocean observations. EMODnet works very closely with all of these different platforms, from autonomous vehicles through to citizens going out and collecting their data in citizen science programs. And we're bringing all of these data together, aggregating them and offering them as integrated standardized layers. We have many different providers. I've mentioned a few already, but this also extends to hydrographic offices. We have research in academia, we have research infrastructures, the private sector as well as an increasing area for data sharing. So it's very, very broad. And then you can see the same graphic of the different sectors that contribute data. They're collecting and providing the data into EMODnet. But EMODnet doesn't work alone. We work very much with different data infrastructures and organizations. We work with the national oceanographic data centers in Europe. They are connected through a network called SeaDataNet. We also work in the context of IODE in the global context as well. And then we work with other more thematic infrastructures like Eurobis, which is a biodiversity infrastructure system, and I'll say more about that. ICES, which has more of a geographical coverage of the Northeast Atlantic, so it's doing fisheries and marine environmental data, but across to the US and Canada, as well as European seas. And then we work very closely with Copernicus Marine Service, not only for the digital twin of the ocean, but also for the data flows, specifically for the operational data that comes from mostly autonomous platforms for the physical biogeochemical data that can be used in modeling. So there's a huge ecosystem there that makes the data flow into EMODnet, and then EMODnet's added value is aggregating all of these data from many different sources, many different formats into these pan-European data layers, but also producing data products on top that can be used by many different stakeholders. This is what EMODnet looks like today. So if you go to the portal, the URL that's on the screen right now, and we can put it in the chat as well, you will discover all of the different offers of EMODnet. You will be able to discover and find and visualize and then eventually download all of the different EMODnet thematics parameters through one central map viewer. So that's a very interactive tool for discovery. If you so like, you can also go back to the metadata catalog, which underpins all of this. It provides the information describing all of the data, and this is very rich. It acknowledges the data providers. It gives you information on data access, formats, etc. And this is a very important tool for also connecting globally, which I'll mention later. We also have not just data services, but web services. They're also very important so that we can connect not just with humans discovering, but also machine-to-machine readability. And we have APIs as well and interfaces for that. Then if we look at some examples of the EMODnet offer, so here on the screen you can see the European CMAP, which is an integrated broad-scale seabed habitat map for Europe. And if I click again, this has only been made possible because EMODnet has worked with its bathymetry experts, its geology experts, its physics for the bottom water current, its benthic or seafloor biodiversity experts. And all of those data have been integrated together to produce this seabed habitat map. It's using European habitat classifications, and it's directly used to support European policy. Also the nature restoration law that has just passed and been approved this Monday. It will be very useful for this as well. So it just shows you the value of bringing all the data together. And in terms of the link with the UN Ocean Decade, particularly Challenge 2, for protecting and restoring ecosystems and biodiversity. And then if we look at crossing with marine environment and human activities data, you can also, using the map viewer, navigate and look at the point data that we have on human activities like platforms, offshore renewable energy, aquaculture and other platforms, together with the marine environmental data. And then you can also visualize and download those. And those are, of course, relevant to Challenge 4 for the sustainable and equitable ocean economy. And then looking at the global offer and coverage, because EMODnet is funded by the European Union, its primary focus is on the regional seas of Europe. That does include the Arctic Ocean, or the Barents Sea especially, but the Northeast Atlantic as well. So we are working to not just maintain, but increase the resolution, the offer in Europe, but that also extends to European overseas territories, to the Caribbean Sea in particular at this point in time, but also other regions, the Caspian Sea, and depending on partnerships, we're able to offer other data. But some EMODnet parameters are fully global. You can see on the screen one of the projections. This is the Arctic projection of EMODnet. So you can choose in the map viewer for that. This is the sea temperature. Sea surface temperature, I should say, as a global parameter, and then you have an EU focus of the bathymetry layers, and you can play with the transparency of the different layers to build up a picture of multiple layers together. So talking about the ocean of physics, there are quite a lot of parameters that have global coverage, such as the temperature, salinity and currents, but there's many other parameters more at the European scale: underwater noise from acoustics, sea level rise, trends, river flow, etc. And its EMODnet physics also works with different regions, so with the Southern Ocean Observing System as well, to provide the infrastructure for this. If we look at marine biodiversity, EMODnet has very close partnership with the European node of the Ocean Biodiversity Information System. And this means that EMODnet Biology and Eurobis are collectively providing 20 million records into the global biodiversity information system. So this is really important to have interoperable biodiversity data. It's used for international biodiversity assessments. And then if we look at bathymetry, the seafloor topography, so this is the digital terrain model of EMODnet Biology. This is bathymetry, sorry. This is just a snapshot from the Norwegian Sea, where I did an expedition with, I think, some other people that are online as well. in the North Norwegian Sea, but it just shows the resolution that you can get. This is an important digital terrain model tool for Europe, but it's also contributing bathymetry data from the European stakeholders into the global Seabed 2030 initiative, which is planning to map the seabed by 2030. We also do this in collaboration with the private sector. So we have many associated partners, including Fugro, who actively share their bathymetry data with EMODnet so that we can curate it, make it fair, and then share it in the global systems. So just a quick recap, what's EMODnet's added value and why do people use it? It's a fully public service, so any of you today could go navigate and access the EMODnet offer. It saves costs ultimately in collecting more data because we're collecting and aggregating data together so it can be used many times. We're adding value to the primary data because we're curating together with the infrastructures. We're integrating into layers and producing data products that can support policy implementation, but also the blue economy. And effectively, the more data we share and integrate, the more we can reduce uncertainty, reduce the risk effectively in the decision making, and we can stimulate innovation. So any of you who are producing applications more for the regional or local scale, or you have ideas for dashboards or anything from gaming through to policy applications, you could use EMODnet data for this. An example from the blue economy is that EMODnet data, bathymetry and physics are now used to microsite the offshore wind platforms. So this is a quote from a company, Van Oord, who spoke at our recent conference. And then on the digital twin, I've talked a lot about the different services of EMODnet, and they stay, but a layer on top is a new toolbox called the European Digital Twin of the Ocean. It's a public European asset, but it's again open to all, so it's globally accessible. And it does focus initially on European marine service data that is on offer, but eventually you will be able to plug in data from different regions. But it's the European marine services are the sort of foundation of the infrastructure. So this is where EMODnet and Copernicus Marine Service work very closely together, and the project Editor Infra is the pilot infrastructure that is feeding the digital twin of the ocean. So this will be developed over the next few years, and please take stock of that, because you will have a chance to get involved with the beta testing and the user requirements as well. And then we look at the EMODnet for the global ocean data ecosystem. I mentioned there is a common metadata catalog, and this is essential because now EMODnet can link and talk to global data ecosystems and inventories and catalogs. So for example, EMODnet is visible and accessible through the Global Earth Observation System of Systems portal and the Ocean Data and Information System, ODIS, which is an initiative of IODE of IOC UNESCO, and it's part of the Ocean Decade initiatives. And then my last few slides, but I really wanted to take a bigger picture of EMODnet's contribution across the Ocean Decade. It's very similar, I would imagine, for the other marine data services as well, but we're all working together to contribute to this really, not just primary data, but the ocean knowledge that is needed for the UN Ocean Decade and democratizing access in the process. But also then a layer on top, not only achieving an accessible ocean where the data is accessible and we have transparent information, but also a digital ocean where we have access to the technologies, the computing power, the scenario building, the decision-making tools, and the capacity building, that not just professionals, but society as well can be involved in the decision-making. Then EMODnet specifically, we've been endorsed as a UN Ocean Decade implementing partner for over a year now. We've been very active in producing the strategies of the data and information strategy, and we remain involved in those along with a number of actions. The digital twin, there's a global action on that, the ocean data strategy and ocean best practices as well. We are also supporting efforts of the Ocean Data Sharing Office, and that will only increase as time goes on, and also in the digital representation of the ocean via the European efforts. We also have a community group within EMODnet that our partners lead, which is about mapping all of the different efforts in EMODnet towards the decade and identifying gaps and opportunities. And you can see here on the right, not only the logos of the efforts and actions I've spoken about, but also the FAIR, which is the findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable philosophy that EMODnet is built upon, but also now one called CARE, which is looking at a lot more about the transparent and ethical approach, where it's very inclusive approach and a responsible approach to data sharing, including from Indigenous populations and wider society, and the ethical use of those data. Then finally, EMODnet works with many different regions. One example I would give was a project between the EU and China called EMODPACE, working with the NMDIS in China, but there's many other initiatives, and we have lots of bilateral interactions, really to look at the interoperability of the different data services. And then for the UN 2030, I think this would be a whole webinar in itself, but there are specific actions like ocean acidification and oxygen database, but also marine litter and others that EMODnet is directly involved with. So EMODnet continues to evolve, and my last slide, I would like to announce that the EMODnet community are doing a vision to 2035 that will come out early next year, and we're doing a stakeholder consultation in the summer, so please look out for the consultation in a few weeks' time. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Kate, for giving us a very quick summary of all of the work that EMODnet is doing, which is very extensive, as we can see. We will have an opportunity to revisit lots of aspects of the different providers, data sets and work during the rest of this webinar series. So this isn't the only time you're going to hear from all of us. This is just an initial overview for everybody who might be concerned, but you have lots and lots of questions and lots of things to look at. So you'll be hearing more from each of us as the webinar series progresses. But thank you, Kate. For now, we are going to take a short break. So we'll have 5 minutes and we'll be back here at 20 to the hour. So for me, that's 15:40 here in Central European time. And we will see you then for the rest of our presentations. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions over the break, please pop them in the Slido. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We will move on now to the next section of our provider presentations, and actually it's me. So I'm going to share my screen and give you a short summary of the data sets that are available from us at EUMETSAT. Just 1 second, if you bear with me. Hopefully you can now all see my screen. If you cannot, maybe one of the organizers can let me know that I'm not sharing the right one. I've got to juggle a couple of PowerPoints moderating for you today, but hopefully you can see the one now on data from EUMETSAT towards marine applications. So a few words about us. Maybe some of you haven't heard of EUMETSAT before. You will have undoubtedly seen data that we provide probably on an everyday basis, as we provide the majority of the satellite data that goes into your weather forecasts and predictions across Europe. And that is our kind of core mandate, if you like. We're a member state organization of 30 different member states across Europe. And so, as I said, we provide weather and climate data for these member states, but we also have an additional mandate where we collaborate on other Earth observation programs, and particularly, and what brings us to you today in this context, the European Commission's Copernicus program, where we operate a number of satellites providing data for the mission. We also have a lot of extensive collaborations beyond Europe, particularly with the African continent, thanks to where our geostationary satellites sit, but also with colleagues globally around the world. Just to give a quick summary here of all the different EUMETSAT operated marine related satellite missions. So this just shows you a timeline of the last sort of 30 plus years, showing the different satellites that we've operated, which are under our mandatory program. So providing weather data, which naturally includes some oceanographic related information, particularly sea surface temperature, but also winds over the ocean. Our optional programs, which include altimetry related missions, so measuring the sea level, and more recently, and a growing complement of satellites from the Copernicus program. We're responsible for the Sentinel-3 and 6 operations presently, but we'll also be operating a number of other missions in the future to provide more marine relevant data. And I'll talk more about some of these missions specifically in a few moments. Just to say about the types of data we provide, Fabrice gave a really nice summary of this, showing where we sit in this sort of value chain or provider landscape, if you like. So we are responsible for bringing the data down from the satellites here to our building in Darmstadt and getting them out the door to the users as quickly as we can. So we provide data at sort of its fastest latency, if you like, within a few hours, even shorter for some of our weather data. It's very rapidly available, but for a lot of the marine data, it's within a sort of 3-hour timeliness. We also process that data to a higher quality over slightly longer time periods. These are our sort of short time and non-time critical data. And also we offer reprocessed data, ensuring there's consistency in the satellite archive over time. And all of this then feeds downstream into the products, for example, from the Copernicus Marine Service, where they combine it with other satellite data. But just give you an idea of the sorts of data that you can get from us. This also tends to be at the kind of highest resolution in terms of space that you can get the data, and also gives you some flexibility to do some of your own processing and analyses if you want to work with some of the higher level data for particular applications. So that's where we sit. We also have our own ocean and CI satellite applications facility who take data from our weather satellites and also from some of the freely available data to create multi-sensor near real-time and climate data records. Some of these actually are distributed through the Copernicus Marine Service as well, such as the sea ice products. But the OCSAT provides data on sea surface winds, sea surface temperature, sea ice parameters, as well as radiative fluxes. And you may have seen some of the sea ice products in particular. These are sort of very popular long-term products that allow us to look at the changes in sea ice over time, or indeed they also did some fantastic work recently looking at marine heat waves that affected Europe last year. EUMETSAT's role in Copernicus, we sit in the space segment alongside the European Space Agency, so operating the missions. As I said, we're responsible for Sentinel-3, Jason-3, Sentinel-6, and soon we'll be responsible for the operations of Sentinel-4 and 5. These are more atmospherically focused missions, but for Sentinel-3, we have the marine-related aspects under our responsibilities. I will also be involved, as I said, in the future in some other marine-relevant missions, such as Crystal and Simmer. So in terms of marine satellites, Sentinel-3, I guess, is really our workhorse, both for the Copernicus program, but also in terms of what we do at EUMETSAT for marine data. And this is how I came to work here at the organization. It has 3 different sets of instruments on board. So it has an ocean color sensor, ULCI, an sea surface temperature measuring instrument called SLSTR, and then a group of instruments that help measure the altimetry. So our sea surface, sea level rise information comes from SRAL and the other instruments in that portfolio. And this provides information about the biological aspects of the ocean in terms of the ocean color, the chlorophyll, sediments, light environment, etc., as well as then the sea surface temperature, and coming soon sea ice surface temperature from the SLSTR. And from the altimetry package, we have sea surface height, significant wave height, and wind speed. Sentinel-6 is an altimetry focused mission in particular. So this is kind of the climate reference mission, if you like, for going forward for us to measure the sea level over long time periods. So this provides compatibility with previous missions, such as the Jason era of instruments, but also going forward, bringing in some of the new sort of state-of-the-art methods for measuring altimetry to ensure that not only are we keeping that long time series consistent, but we're also improving the accuracy with which we can measure these parameters. So we provide data across these different main data streams: altimetry, sea surface temperature, and ocean color. And I really wanted to emphasize here that, you know, one of the powerful things about having all this data provided together is the ability to use this data in a synergistic sense to provide different application perspectives. So a lot of these applications, particularly ones that are relevant for the ocean decade, really need synergistic use of different data sets together in order to address them. They also need data from beyond the traditional ocean measuring approaches. So we also provide weather data, data relating to land, and climate related data, which can be important to bring in to contextualize these applications. So in terms of our data at work, really it can be used for a huge variety of different applications. And I just highlighted some here, whether it's looking at ocean carbon content, risks of harmful algal blooms and their impacts, sea level rise over time, the impacts of severe storms, or changes in temperature and risks of marine heat waves. Satellite data can really provide a lot of information towards these different applications. And this has led us to do some work towards the UN Ocean Decade. So we have a particular endorsed action at the moment, which is generating a series of case studies, which are designed to show how our data can be used to meet the challenges that we've discussed before. Each case study includes a web article, which is within our case study library on our website, and it has a supporting Jupyter notebook, which provides a narrative explaining the data and use case behind the particular application, why it's relevant for the UN Ocean Decade. Also shows you how to access the data and to analyze and visualize it. So really you can learn exactly how to do what we've done in the case study. This has compatibility with Wekio, which I'll say a bit more about in a minute, and Fabrice already mentioned. And also some of these case studies include working with the downstream products from the Copernicus Marine Service where they're appropriate to the applications. You can find them all on our GitLab and also in the Wekio Jupyter Notebook case study library. In terms of data access, UMETSAT offers a variety of different ways for users to access data depending on their needs. So we have things like a view service where you just want to get quick looks. We also have a long-term archive. And then we have more sort of push and pull services, some of which are online. So our UMETSAT data store, which feeds into Wekio. This is where you can go through a web browser or use APIs to search for data and download it yourself. We have some customization options available there through our data tailor, and these feed the data store sets feed into Wekio. We also have what we call our push services. So if you have a particular need to retrieve data or receive data as fast as you can, reliably without an internet connection or through a particular type of internet connection network, you can use either our UMETCAST satellite or UMETCAST terrestrial services. These are not available fully globally, but there are certain areas where you could benefit from this service. This is something designed to really push data out to users who need that reliably as soon as possible every day, particularly useful in our context of our weather services. In terms of the support we offer, it's very broad. So this is where I work in the organization as part of our user support. We have a help desk, which is kind of our one-stop point for if you have any questions at all about anything that we do and services we provide. That's ops@umetsat.in. You'll always be able to find somebody who can help you through there. But we have a lot of online resources at our user portal. In our code base for you to access working examples. We offer a range of different trainings. This is one of them that falls under that kind of banner, I guess, but we also have a lot of different courses we run every year, including in person at various conferences and online. In terms of self-paced learning, you can look at our video tutorials that are on our YouTube channel. And we also have, as I said before, a variety of case studies which can show different examples of working with our data, and they're supported now more and more often by our Jupyter Notebook catalog. I'll make one more quick advert here for another event that's coming up, the 5th to 6th of November this year in Lisbon. We will be hosting our first Marine User Days event. I'm very excited about this. It's again with various partners from across the European data provider landscape, and it's really designed to bring together users from across the value chain of data usage. So whether you are working directly with stakeholders in a particular maritime industry, you're a scientist working on developing new products from satellite data, working in modeling, or you're a policy advisor, this really is an event designed to help you network and meet people across this very large data chain and landscape of providers to get data in the right place for you to use it for your needs. So yeah, if this is something that's of interest to you, I'd encourage you to register and come and join us in Lisbon. Thank you very much. And I will now hand over to Aurora to talk about the Copernicus Marine Service.
Hello, thank you, Hayley. I hope you can all hear and see me. I will just take time to share my screen. You all see my screen? It's okay?
All good. Please continue.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm Aurora Biardo. I'm working at Mercator Ocean International as a product owner in the product management team. And I'm going to give you a general overview of the Copernicus Marine Service, which is useful for accessing ocean data and tackling ocean challenges. So to summarize, the Copernicus Marine Service provides free and open marine data and services to support marine policy implementation, blue economy, scientific innovation, and so on. So first, I wanted to introduce the Copernicus program in general. So it has been launched a few years ago by the European Union. The objective of this program is to develop and implement an operational Earth observation program for Europe. And it is split into 6 different services. So such as atmosphere, marine, land, climate change, emergency, and security. So each of them gives free and open access to data based on in situ and satellite measures. And we are going to focus, of course, on the marine environment monitoring. So the Copernicus Marine Service offers a large range of data, it has been said before. So the data can come from different sources, such as in situ and satellite observation, but also models. So this data can cover different temporal scales. So we have data in the past that we call multi-year, then data in the present or near real time that we call real time, and data in the future, so forecasts up to 10 days in the future. Then the geographical coverage is split into the global ocean, but also European regional seas, such as, for example, Arctic Ocean, Baltic Sea, Mediterranean Sea, Black Sea, and so on. And the data we provide is used by all sectors of the blue economy that you can see here. So here are the 12 blue markets that are grouped by the 3 pillars of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So there is environment, society, and economy. And on the web portal of Copernicus Marine, we can browse through the use cases that will give you an overview, for example, of the use and usefulness of our data for each market. And now I will present a little bit more what is in the portfolio of Copernicus Marine Service, so the data itself. So we can split it into 3 main groups. So we like to split it into those 3 colors of the ocean. So blue ocean for physics, white ocean for the sea ice, and green ocean for biogeochemistry. And I will detail it a little bit more in this slide. So here you have some examples of parameters available on the Copernicus Marine Service for each color of the ocean. So for example, for the blue ocean, we have temperature, currents, salinity, waves, but also wind and sea surface elevation or sea surface height. For the white ocean, we have several parameters as well, such as sea ice age, sea ice concentration, sea ice thickness, albedo as well, and snow. It's very diverse as well on the white ocean. And finally, for the green ocean, we can have some parameters about chlorophyll and primary production, so phytoplankton, the ocean color, so transparency, reflectance, turbidity, oxygen as well, CO2 with the carbonate system, zooplankton, and nutrients, for example. And I will quickly show you how to access the data, maybe for if some of you don't know the web portal, but I will try to go quick. So there is a homepage that you can see here. So there is a single access to this Copernicus Marine Service with a simple registration to on the website. You can access to all the free data. And all the data is harmonized through the same format, which is a NetCDF format. So we also follow the FAIR principles. And you can, for example, access to the full catalog by clicking on Ocean Products on the left. Then you can see a page like this, that is our catalog. You will see all the products. So what we call a product is actually a set of data, so one or more data sets. You can filter on what interests you, and then you land on a product sheet like this. So with all the description and also useful documentation about each product. So you can have access to information about data quality, technical information, so download services. So we have different protocols to download the data. The DOI to cite the product in a paper, for example, and also the visualization tool on which you can see the whole catalog. So just a quick overview of this visualization tool that is here. It shows you the expert tool, but there are also other more simple tools. So those viewers provide information on the entire catalog. There are some specific views, for example, for the polar regions. You can export images, video, data, create some plots, and access to high resolution graphs. So it's very well developed. And then, so that was for the data itself, but we can also provide some interesting documentation on the ocean health in more general. So for example, we provide once a year an ocean state report, which is a publication that provides a state of the art on the ocean, current state of the ocean, the natural variations and changes in the ocean. And there is also a summary, which is accessible on the web portal as well. We also provide some ocean monitoring indicators, so that are free downloadable trends and datasets covering the past 30 years. So these are mainly key variables for monitoring the oceanic trends, notably in relation to climate change. And they all are linked to the blue, green, and white ocean as well. I've put some example of indicators here, so you can see that it can have the form of maps and also trends, depending on the information we want to give. So this can be useful for decision makers, for example, and to see trends. And I also wanted to show you the Ocean Climate Portal, which is also accessible via the Copernicus Marine Service web portal. This climate portal has been recently added. It presents key variables linked to the climate change in a visual and didactic way. So for example, we can have access to the ocean heat content, the ocean acidification, some indicators about the sea ice extent in Arctic and Antarctic, for example, the sea level, and so on. And finally, so you will find on the website a strong user support, such as for the other services, that can answer to a lot of questions that you may have. So, for example, there are many e-learning material and tutorials videos to guide the users to access and to download the data. There is also a chat and articles, more than 300 use cases online that you can browse. And yeah, you have the possibility also to search for articles directly from the chat. So I encourage the visit of the user support tool that is easily findable on the web portal. And yeah, I think that's all for the Copernicus Marine Service. Maybe we give more details in the next webinars of the series. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aurora. I can see you've already got some questions coming through into Slido, but I remind anybody else, if you'd like to ask any questions now, you can pop them in the chat. Sorry, in the chat, in the Slido, not in the chat, definitely in the Slido, which will be linked there for you. Okay, so we're now moving on from our presentations into our interactive Slido session. So as I mentioned, we're using Slido for Q&A, but we're also going to use it now for an interactive session where we're going to ask you to give us some information about what you'd like from the rest of this webinar series. So we're intending to host a number of follow-on webinars to this one where we can dive into more of a description about some of the different challenges and how our data can be used for them. But we'd like to know from you how we can formulate that a bit better. So if you visit the Slido now, you'll see that there is on the top, you'll have Q&A, and then there's a section on polls. And if you go to that section on polls now, you'll see that there is an active poll, which is just asking you which region you are connecting from today. And this is not to say that when we do our rest of our webinar series that we'll be focusing on particular areas, but it's very useful for us to know where you're coming from so that we can maybe provide a selection of different use cases, but also just to know who we've got in the room. So to get started, please enter in the poll, which region are you connecting from today? So I'm here in Europe, in Germany, as are I think nearly all of my colleagues who are on the panel today, but they'll be filling in too. I see we've got a few folks from North America, some Africans and Asians with us too. Probably not the best time of day for some of you on the other side of the world. So maybe we have less folks from Asia, Latin America and Oceania than we otherwise would, but hopeful that some of them will be able to listen to the recording when they wake up later today or tomorrow. Okay, so I think we've got a bit of a mix, but mostly from Europe, which is, I guess, not surprising given the European focus of the data. So welcome everybody from wherever you are in the world. I think we can move on to our next poll now. So here we wanted to know from you, what would you consider your main area of expertise? I think this is just you can just pop in the text, whatever you consider your main area of expertise to be. Do you consider yourself a scientist, a particular subsection of oceanography? Are you involved in policy and satellite data operations? What is your main batch of knowledge that you have? Oh, marine corporation, interesting. Innovation and entrepreneurship. So we've got quite a few different topics here. Some good remote sensing people. Hi, me too. Oh, tsunamis. Meteorologists, welcome. Communications. Ecology. Okay, we've got lots of marine ecology people, conservation, GIS, some physics, climate monitoring. This is really good to see, because I think one thing that was clear from the earlier presentations on the Ocean Decade was that really this is a very, very broad and ambitious program that seeks to address challenges that cover many, many different topics. So having all of you in the room today is very encouraging to know that we have the right sort of skills and knowledge to start working on this. Professors, excellent. We've got some teachers in the room too. International relations. People have some regional expertise as well. That's excellent. People in the UN. Okay. Blue education. Okay. People moving from different subsections into Earth observation. That was me too. I went from environmental sciences and oceanography specifically into Earth observation. So I think a lot of us start with that broad background and then move into this sort of slightly niche but globally spread observation type. Oh, underwater wireless sensing. That's very interesting. Okay, fantastic. Thank you all for filling that in. I think we'll move on to our next poll now. So in terms of Earth observation, modeled and in situ data, so all the different types of data that you've heard about today, generally how familiar do you feel you are with this type of data? I love watching these jump around. Okay. Okay, so we're not all experts, so this is a good thing, because it means there's still some need for us to talk more about this in the upcoming webinars. Okay, I think we've settled now. So most of you are somewhat familiar with the data sets. I think this is maybe what I would expect. We've got a few who are maybe more expert, some who are less expert, which is good. This will help us to decide how we design some of the future webinars and whether we start at different levels and whether we focus in some of them maybe more or less on more advanced techniques. So this is quite good to know. Okay, I think we can have the next poll, please. Okay, what sector do you currently work in? Are you an academic working at a university or research organization? Do you work for a government institution? Are you in the charity or private sector? Are you like me and work somewhere kind of in between in the international government space? Where do you work? Some current students as well. Again, I think it's nice to see a really good split here because the different challenges of the UN Ocean Decade require actors, I think, in lots of different sectors of society. So to see that we've got a good range of attendees from all these different sectors is good for me to know. Okay, so maybe we have a bit of a majority of people working in research, but also quite a lot of people in the government and private sector, and some people who are still learning and working through their education as well. So a good broad group of people. I think we can move on to our next poll. Okay, which type of Earth observation model or in situ data do you work with most frequently? And I think this one is also a free text. So, you can say, do you work here with sea surface temperature? Do you work with physical models? Do you work with bathymetry? What are the types of data that you use the most? Oh, you don't use them yet. Okay, this is good because then, you're definitely in the right place to learn about new ones. Some SST, I'm happy to hear that. It's a very important data type. Physical models, lots of SST. SAR data, ocean color, woohoo! I have a PhD in ocean color, so always happy to see that. Oh, omics, that's interesting. Data, optical data, lots of different remote sensing data. Oh, Sentinel-6, hi, that's one of ours. Lots of people working with lots of different types of data in combination. I think that's really very important. Being an expert in just one type of data isn't necessarily so helpful when it comes to addressing the challenges our ocean faces. So a lot of people working directly with the satellite data as well as with the downstream products. Lots of in situ data and some economic data as well. Okay. Buoys. Stuff from EMODnet and CMIMS. Okay, so some of you already are quite familiar with some of our data sets, which is great to see. Hopefully we can maybe expand the amount of data that you're familiar with using and maybe help you use it in combination. But yeah, lots of SST users. This is fantastic to see. Okay, so we know that we definitely in the rest of this webinar series need to cover the full plethora of different data products that we offer. So this is good to know as well. Plenty of work for us to do. Okay, do you currently engage with any of the UN Ocean Decade initiatives? Are you part of ECOP already? Have you attended the conference? Are there other webinars you've attended? Is this your first one? It looks like we're roughly settling down about 70-30. So not that many of you are currently involved with Ocean Decade initiatives. So this is in some ways good to know because now we know that you can be involved and hopefully through this you'll learn about all the different things that are available. So we're reaching new communities with this webinar, which I'm very pleased to see. Okay, is that our last poll or have we got more polls? I can't remember how many we have. Let's see what's up next. Aha, okay, so about the challenges. Of the different challenges that we spoke about earlier, which one of these do you think is most relevant to the work that you're currently doing? Where does your work fit under these challenges? So quite a few of you working in skills, knowledge and technology for all. I would consider myself, most of my work to be under that area with the user engagement that we do. This webinar probably fits really under there. Lots of people working on biodiversity, digital representation. I think we can see from the presentation so far that actually this sort of digitizing of our oceans, of understanding how we can bring data together and what it represents, using it for prediction is a really big part of what we're working on at the moment to help address challenges. One that overlaps a lot of the others, I think, as well. A good digital representation can really help us to ask the questions we need to ask. And be a few less people working on climate change than I suspected. Perhaps we need to advertise the rest of the webinar series to more people in the climate sector as well. Okay, so again, a good split across the challenges. This is good to see. Okay, what's next in our polls? Okay, so what are the biggest obstacles you see to achieving the UN Ocean Decade goals? What are the challenges that you're facing? Extra points for saying how we can help you. Skills. Okay, so things you need to learn how to do. Lack of funding. Silos, yeah, it can be a challenge. I think this is a real difficult one, is where stuff sits and how we share across different projects and platforms. Funding, yeah. General public doesn't know about it. Yeah, this is an interesting one. The ocean's really, I mean, I live in Darmstadt. I can't see the ocean except for the satellite pictures. So we're very, very far away from it. I think people don't think it's something that affects their day-to-day life, but we all know it does, I think, if we're an ocean expert. Space for young ideas, interoperability, political will, visibility of all the steps between what I can do and the actual results. This is a really interesting one. I think this is something that we can maybe bring out a little bit with some of the case studies we'll show you, with hopefully end-to-end processes for how data can be used for something in particular. Political will, yeah. How to share knowledge. Creating one database. This is very difficult. I think we can talk more about this in the coming weeks. Difficult politically and difficult practically, because there's so much data out there. I sit next to our big data center here, which we've just expanded again. I wouldn't want to have it all in one place, but I think there's things we can do with regards to federation, and we're actually moving a lot in that direction. I think you'll hear more about some of those in some of the examples in the coming webinars. So synergies, lack of expertise, data sources, access to data. Hopefully this is something we can definitely address for you. A lot of the data we've got is freely, well, pretty much everything we have talked about today is freely available. Learning to access it can be a bit of a challenge, but that's definitely something we can help with. Okay, thanks very much for all the input to this poll. Do we have another one, team? Yes. What are you most interested in learning about in this webinar series? Which of these is the priority for you? Probably it's all of them, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so most of you are interested in terms of priorities of learning how specific data can be applied for certain topics. I think this is something we can do with some of our case studies that we'll share in the coming webinars. Next poll, please. Okay, where do you think Earth observation model and in situ data can best contribute to the decade challenges? Which ones of these do you think are places we have the most opportunity to use data to benefit? Climate research and mitigation, mapping ecosystems. Okay, so I think we have a very strong focus here on enhancing climate change research and mitigation. I think we all know that's one of the biggest cross-cutting challenges facing our oceans today. So the next poll, please. Okay, I think this one is an open text. So what challenges do you face when using marine Earth observation model and in situ data? So specifically when you're trying to work with data, what is it that makes it difficult for you? Is it the skills you have? Is it the technologies? What are the challenges? Lack of knowledge around certain things, spatial resolution. This can be a challenge, I can say, when we design and operate satellites too. Examples, yeah. I think we've got some we can hopefully share with you for this. So hopefully this webinar, so clouds. Yeah, if you work with ocean color, this is a challenging one for sure. Uncertainties. We definitely have some interesting projects that I can talk about from UMetSat on this one. How to communicate learnings to stakeholders. That can be a real challenge. A lot of this is very technical. Not open access, too many clouds. Yeah, it can be difficult to know which things to use. Verifying forecast model data. Some technical stuff here with bias adjustment. Explanations on the Jupyter Notebooks available. Okay, this is definitely something we can cover in this webinar series. Yeah, lack of NetCDF. I think most of the data that we'll talk about in this webinar series is in NetCDF, but we can also maybe talk a bit about conversions and stuff. Of equipment, high resolution data. How to manage NetCDF. Definitely got some examples that can help you with that. And processing. Yeah, I think we can also point towards some resources that can help with that, even for free. Okay, thank you. Next poll, please. Okay, how much technical detail do you want from us in the upcoming webinar series? Do you need really beginner stuff, introductions to data formats and how to start Python, or are you already a little bit familiar with this and so you'd like a bit more advanced stuff using our APIs, or where do you sit in this area? Should say this isn't the only opportunity you have. Of course, this webinar won't be all things to all people, but we've definitely got lots of other training opportunities we can connect you to if you need a bit more beginner or a bit more advanced support. Okay, so somewhere between beginner and intermediate, I think, is most of us here today. Okay, next poll, please. Okay, particular topics you'd like to see covered in future webinars. Are there particular marine applications you're interested in, or are there particular technical skills you'd like to see us cover? What can we put into these next webinars for you? Climate change adaptation. That's an interesting topic. Yeah, how can we use data to decide how we adapt? Some stuff on funding opportunities. Python tools, there'll definitely be some of those. How to manage remote sensing data with Python. Yeah, I think for most of us, I can certainly speak for myself here, and I know a lot of our colleagues who work with on the WECIA projects are using Python-related programming, real case studies, successful practices. We've got some nice examples we could share with you, I think. Oh, deciding which data serves you best. This is definitely a challenge depending on the application, but something the expertise in the team here can probably help. Early warnings, usage of APIs, yeah. Training with satellite data, links with non-EU platforms, basic cloud stuff. Okay, predicting SST, networking, community engagement, sharing research with people who need it. Yeah, this could be a real challenge, I think, as well. We said before, it's difficult when you have a technical topic and you've got to communicate it to people who aren't experts and have very different perspectives to us. Accessing data. Okay, lots and lots of different things. Okay, we're going to take all of these together when we do our next planning meeting and figure out what we want to cover in the next upcoming webinars. Okay, have we reached the end of our polls, or is there still more to come? Let's see. Okay, yeah, which area of marine data applications are you interested in? So particular environmental topics here. Are you interested in marine heat waves? Is it hurricanes? Are you looking at climate change trends in sea level, algal blooms, citing renewable energy? What is it that you are particularly interested in terms of applications? Winds and waves, renewable energy, offshore wind farms, species distributions. Okay, climate monitoring. Polar regions, yeah, very hot topic, if you'll excuse the slight pun at the moment. Marine mammals, fisheries, primary productivity, biodiversity. Conservation, modelling. Heat waves, storm surges. Okay, lots and lots of different topics. I think this reflects the broad challenges that we were talking about earlier with the UN Ocean Decade. Really, all of these are somewhere embedded in those different challenges. Okay, our next poll, please. And I think we've just got one more. So how do you currently use marine earth observation, modeling data and in situ data in your work? Is it something you use for writing your research papers? Is it something you use to inform policy? Is it something you use in education? How do you use data that you currently have? So research, making maps in your thesis, forecasting, monitor areas, yeah. Lots and lots of research. I'm not surprised at this, given we had quite a lot of academics with us today. Indicator development, teaching. Something you hope to use in the future. Great. It's nice to get people early in their career so they know all this is available and they can go on and do excellent things with it even before they've made the choice about what they want to work on. Blue school projects, informing policy. Lots and lots of different areas. Okay, and I think we can then move on to our final poll. Okay, so how do you think we can help support the advancement of Ocean Decade initiatives? So if there's anything you're working on in regards to the Ocean Decade, what can we do to help you? Can we give presentations? How can we collaborate? Filling data gaps. Okay, yep, this is something I think we work a lot on with our new projects and new products. We'll talk maybe more about that in some upcoming webinars about what's on the development pipeline for us. I mentioned there's some new missions. I know CMIMs are constantly developing new products as well. Help build skills. Yep, most of us have training programs, so we can maybe highlight some specific ones around the topics you've mentioned already. And education for ECOPS and folks in Africa. API encoding tutorials, definitely something we can help with. Make a documentary. Oh, I'd like to do that. We have got some MOOCs, which were quite good fun to film. So you can see some of those. I can share the links to those. I'm glad to see that everybody's interested in code. I like sharing code. Inspiring co-creation of knowledge, show us how to understand and use products, data access. Okay, lots of different things to work on. Political lobbying, interesting one. Sharing code. Networking, yeah, I think that was something we can facilitate more of in this. Okay, fantastic. Thanks for all the suggestions. We're going to look through all of these responses to this poll, as I said, after this webinar when we have our wrap-up session with the team here to plan the next ones. And we'll let you know what's going to be coming up in due time. But before we close off the session today, I'd like to invite Alessandra to give a few words from the perspective of DG DEFIS and the European Commission and their Copernicus programme on the work that we're doing under the UN Ocean Decade, supporting with Earth observation data in particular. Hi, Alessandra, can you hear me?
Good afternoon and good afternoon to you all. First of all, thanks a lot for the invitation to this webinar, to the first one of the series. And you have been just guided into a very interesting deep dive into the marine data with the expert guidance of our colleagues. And yeah, we all know that data are really very important, especially reliable data, to make our marine knowledge becoming effective and actionable. In a way, to make a difference in how we interact with our ocean, to monitor, to predict our oceans, but for ultimately safeguard the oceans. And the reliable data are really one of the key enablers of this process. And at the foundation of the reliable data, we have the data collectors, Copernicus Marine Service, EPONNET, EUMETSAT, as you have heard today by Aurore, Kate, and Ailey. They have introduced you to the full wealth of data available, satellite-based data, Earth observation, in situ ocean observation and how they are then the basis for added value products, sorry. And they have also presented you how to access this data, how to have them really at your fingertips, how to use them, to access them in an operational way. And how this is really important. And what I would like also to highlight is that it's very important, the joint approach that has been taken today, that has been taken in this initiative. So the idea that the marine community is providing data and information serving an extended user community for making this community as broad as possible, as we have seen also before in the Q&A session. So from education to decision and policy makers, scientific community, public and private organization dealing with ocean monitoring. And I would like then to conclude thanking to all the people, to the participants of this webinar, potential users or already users of the data, and asking you to somehow really literally dive into the marine data oceans that have been presented to you today. And because your involvement is really valuable, and that the feedback that you will provide is important to shape better and better our action. So thanks a lot from my side to the organizers and to all the people that have been attending today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alessandra. I think that's a really nice way to wrap up what we've covered today, which has been a lot. So thank you to all of you for attending. Thank you all for your questions and answers that are in the Slido. We're going to bring that up now. We don't have much time. We're actually already over, but we have been answering your questions in the background. So I'd encourage you to check the Slido now and have a look at the answers there. We'll also be uploading the questions and answers to the website. But just to maybe have a quick look through, just to give everybody a bit of an idea about what's being covered. There's a few broad topics that maybe I can say that we will cover more on in the coming webinars. So for example, things about how to access certain types of data, and some specific elements maybe on the upcoming initiatives such as the DTO. I think these sort of technology-driven questions are things that we will definitely cover in upcoming webinars as part of this series. I think most of the other questions have been answered by the presenters in particular for you, so you can check back and see them there, particularly the technical ones about some of the data products, and some about the particular links to other initiatives. But we'll pepper kind of some of these topics all the way through the rest of the webinars in the series. Somebody's asking what is the website. I think we can put that in chat for you. This is our EU Data for the Ocean Decade website, which is where we're bringing together all of the material from this webinar series. So other than that, it just remains for me to say thank you very much to all the presenters today, and as well to all of the people who've participated, everybody who asked questions, and to announce that we will have the next webinar in the series on the 10th of October. And then we hope the rest of you will join us then. We will put more information out on all of our channels to share with you about the contents of this webinar and the rest of the webinars in the series. And you can also come back and rewatch the recordings online. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions and comments about things, you can get in touch with all of us through the various mechanisms we've shared today. And we look forward to welcoming you at the next one of this series. So thank you very much again to all the presenters and to all of you for participating. Bye-bye and have a good afternoon.